Hello, my name is Yesenia Guitron. I was here last year, and I hope to see many of your faces. If you guys do this again next year, I hope to be here again next year. So like Steve said, I started working for banks in 1998, right out of high school, and I always knew I wanted to be a banker. And I worked for banks, and my manager would really like me, and she went to another bank, but she would bring me with her. And then she would get invited to come to another bank, do the same thing, but with a better pay. They would always bring me with them wherever they went. So I was really flattered for that. And then the market tanked, like right around 2008. And I was doing mortgages. So banking shifted to the mortgage world. And when that happened, I could no longer continue to make loans. So then I went back to the retail banking, which is where you open a checking, a savings account, equity line of credit, basic everyday stuff. So I went to work for a lady that I knew in St Helena, and I started in 2008 for Wells Fargo. At first, I was a little hesitant because Wells Fargo had a really bad reputation for not being customer service oriented. And I was very customer service oriented, and I took pride on that. But again, market tanked. I was a single mom. I didn't have very many options, and I knew I was really good at what I was doing. So I accepted a job. And what was different about Wells Fargo from the other banks that I had worked for was that they have a 1-month-long training. So for a month, I would have to report to another branch where you're not working with customers, but they would tell you, there's this type of checking account. This account is for like a field worker, a hotel lady, this is who you give this account to. And then there's the special elite accounts for richer people that have higher balances. So they would tell you what accounts go to whom. And then they emphasized so much on ethics and do the right thing. And don't do this and don't do that. And, don't open a fake account. Don't give ATM cards. And don't open credit card accounts to people that don't need it. So I was like, okay, that sounds like easy, So after my training was done, they have assigned all kinds of code of conduct and ethics things that we were trained, and we give it to our branch manager, and so we go back to the branch. And one of the things that they said is if you see something suspicious, whether you have proof or not, you have to report it. So I come to the branch, and I'm very excited. I get my new desk. I'm calling my friends and my family, come on over. Now I need to open all these accounts. I had customers following me from one bank to another. So I was like, okay, I'm set. This is it. I don't want to go anywhere else. Wells Fargo is it. Because they can do mortgage, they can do auto insurance, auto lending, anything. I'll just stay with Wells Fargo. But soon enough, I discovered that there was funky things happening. All the things that they gave me on my training of what not to do, they were doing at the branch. And at first I thought, maybe this person needs a little refresher, because to me it's fresh. I just went through the training. So I went to my manager and I suggested that this person maybe have a refresher as to what was happening. And so they, I guess I gave it the benefit of the doubt, and it stopped momentarily, but then it continued. And things that would happen would be like, customers coming in with 5 debit cards. Why would someone have 5 debit cards if you only need 1 and you can only have 1 active? Or people would find out that their debit cards all of a sudden stopped working. And that's because somebody intentionally canceled it and ordered another one, because they would get commission for ordering a debit card. Other customers that I had just opened an account, I would call in about 10 days, make sure that they received their checks and they received everything and they're ready to go. They don't have any more questions. Then I would find out that the accounts that I had opened 10 days prior had been closed, and then a new set of accounts were open. And it all pointed to the same person. So the same person that I thought needed a refresher was doing it intentionally. So at that point, about a month after I had been training and working at the St Helena branch, I did what my instructor told me to do. Report it to your manager. So I called the instructor just to make sure that that's what I needed to do, and she says, well, bring it up to your manager. I did, and nothing happened. And again, it momentarily would stop, but then it would increase as time went by. Now, I want to give everybody a picture of what St. Helena, I don't know if anybody's been to St. Helena, or you guys can locate us in the map. It's a little tiny town. It's in the heart of the Napa Valley. So there's 5,000 residents total in St. Helena. There's 14 banks for a town of 5,000 people. But we have to just forget about all the other 14 banks. We're only going to work with Wells Fargo. So one Wells Fargo for 5,000 residents. In Wells Fargo branch, there was 5 bankers, so 5 people just like myself, and all of us had to open 8 accounts. So if you guys look at the board, at the bottom of that board, it says 8 equals great. That's a Wells Fargo motto, thank you. 8 equals great. So we all had to open 8 accounts a day. So if there's 5 bankers, and we each have to open 8 accounts, that means that every single day we have to open at least 40 accounts. Now do the math. If somebody's got the phone, you can do the math. Do 5,000 divided by 40. That gives you 125. So in 125 days, I would have given every single person in St. Helena a bank account with Wells Fargo. And again, keep in mind that there's 13 other banks in town, and the competition's very tough. So I knew something was happening. So I continued to do my job. We would have meetings in the morning, and the managers would ask you, how many accounts do you commit to opening? So everybody, the managers wanted for us to say 8. But I didn't say 8, because I knew better. I knew there was no way, even with all my clients, if they came from Napa, St. Helena, regardless, I was not going to be able to open 8 accounts a day. So I would say 3. I commit to 3. And they would look at me funny, like, what are you thinking? What do you mean? And then I became sort of like the bad employee, because I was not telling them what they wanted to hear. So fast forward to 2010, 2 years after I had been with Wells Fargo, I finally get fired. I reported the fake accounts on and on and on since I started. And then August of 2009, that's when things got really, really bad. And they started retaliating. And I didn't know what retaliation meant, so I had to go to the employee handbook and looked it up. And I knew that there had to be some sort of protection for workers. I'm doing this in good faith. Also, Napa Valley is known for its vineyards and its wineries. So there's a lot of field workers. And most of these people are migrant workers. They don't even speak the language. They don't even live here permanently. They're seasonal. They come, they work during harvest, and then they go back. So those customers didn't want to come back and bring any complaints. One, they would fear also retaliation. Well, what about if they call the cops? Then I get to be sent home to Mexico. They didn't even speak the language. But they really trusted anyone that was in the desks. So I would ask my manager over and over, what have you done? What are we going to do? This keeps happening. And now I have my own line, because I'm bilingual. I have my own line of people trying to put in their claims. Not only that, there's a lot of people that had credit cards that they never requested. Now, credit cards are different than debit cards. And the credit cards, they would also sign you up for rewards. So if anybody's got a credit card with rewards, you know how that works. But usually those credit cards come with an annual fee. So $69, $59, whatever it be. But they would have the debit cards and the credit cards sent to the branch. So the customer never knows that they have a credit card in their name, open in Wells Fargo.
Well, unless you check your report and then it will show, right?
Right, but remember, most of the people there were immigrants. Most of those people don't have the time or don't even have the computer to look up their activity online.
Don't know how to read a credit.
Yes. So what would happen is they would get charged the annual fee and they wouldn't pay. So a month came by and then there was a late fee now. So now we have the annual fee plus the late fee. And so that goes on for several months until the bank decides to close the card. Now you're like about $200 or $300 in the negative, and you get sent to collections. So now you start getting collection calls, letting you know that you have a credit card that you didn't take care of. And you have a balance of about $300 and something because, there's like the interest and all these fees, and then the collectors they charge a percentage. So that's when people start realizing, wait a minute, I never requested that debit card or that credit card. And so that's when customers would come to me and say, what happened? And then I became almost like, my full job was being an investigator. I was tracing, and, it all pointed to the one person. So again, I lost, but I knew I was being targeted because they were just making my life miserable. So in 2010, I contacted an attorney, and I said, this is what happened, and I brought about 300 cases with me. I was able to collect a lot of documentation and proof. Now they ask me, why were you doing this? Were you not afraid? And I guess in my own world, I was so determined, and I was so sure that I was doing the right thing that I knew I could not be harmed. Because I was doing the right thing. All I really wanted was for Wells Fargo management to say, thank you. Thank you for bringing it up. We will look into it. They never even acknowledged that I said that. But again, I brought all my emails. I started collecting, because the manager would say, well, no one's brought in any complaints to me. And then I said, well, they don't speak English. So they're bringing it to me. Well, have them bring their own interpreter. Because if I don't have any complaints, then it's not happening. So sometime later later that year, we filed a lawsuit against Wells Fargo for wrongful termination. Again, I had all the proof. I had a big banker's box full of documentation. People were signing affidavits and say, this is what happened. I didn't request it. Not only that, and I don't mean to give anybody any ideas. Everybody seems to be very, very decent people, but just bear with me. All the banks are regulated the same, or should be regulated the same. In 2011, after the 9/11 attacks, the banks created a regulation called the Patriot Act. And that meant that in order for you or any bank institution to open an account, you have to have 2 forms of ID. And this was in order to prevent a terrorist from opening accounts and using money on an American system. 2 forms of ID. A driver's license, a passport, and then a secondary form of ID. So they have very specific lists as to what you can use. Every single bank in the United States has to abide by that rule, except for Wells Fargo. Wells Fargo is even partnered with the Mexican consulate, and me being a Mexican national, I was very upset, and I've been calling and I've been pestering the Mexican consulate because Wells Fargo allows Mexican nationals to open a bank account using a Mexican ID that is not approved under the Patriot Act. That's exactly my question. How can they continue to do this? So what I want is for the bank regulators to do their job. There has to be a bank police that slaps them on the hand, but not only slap them on the hand, because just last week there was an article with CNN that said in the last 20 months, Wells Fargo has been fined $1.8 billion. And this all started in 2016. So I'm going to backtrace a little bit. I filed my lawsuit in 2010, and I lost. Little me against the big giant Wells Fargo. I lost. It happens to be a Wells Fargo San Francisco-based company, and they were trialed here in San Francisco. So the odds were just stacked against me. So I lost. my case was so strong that we appealed. And again, I lost. So then after that, I was just like, okay, forget it. I'm done. I'm tired. This is so tiring. You know, you have to tell your story over and over and over again. And so not until late of 2016, and it had been, 4 years later, I just thought, I'm done. And I kept my box with all the documents. I shredded everything. Finally, I was like, okay, I'm ready to move on. Nothing's going to happen. Wells Fargo's never going to give me the public acknowledgement or public apology that, you know, you were right. Thank you for doing the right thing. That never happened, and it's never happened to this day. And then late in 2016, I started getting calls from a lot of reporters from the New York Times, from the Washington Post. So it turns out that there's a congressional hearing where John Stumpf was being interrogated. And a senator from Oregon found out about my case and confronted Stumpf. You know, now you say, Mr. Stumpf, now you say that people should have told you that this was happening and alerted you. Well, someone did, and that was me. And what happened to her? And he said, I'll just save you the trouble. You fired her. And, you know, he went on to say different examples, like homeless people with 9 checking accounts. Wow. How do you explain that? Why would they need 9 checking accounts? So, and, you know, they started remembering about my case. Well, I reported it since 2008. It started when I first witnessed it was in 2008. So now 8 years later, it's come up. And I start giving interviews, and you know, I'm hoping something happens, and really nothing happens. So then the last one, I'm thinking, like, I did that for like 2 or 3 months, which was very, very exhausting. But one of the last interviews that I had was with Liz Wagner from CBS, NBC, thank you, NBC investigator. So before she interviewed me, she said, do you know what happened with your case with OSHA? And I said, no, I don't know what OSHA, I know OSHA. My family has restaurants, and I associate OSHA with restaurants and health department coming to inspect that everything's safe. So, and she says, well, it turns out that the investigator that was assigned your case is this guy. His name is Darrell Whitman, and he was the one that took your case. And now he's a whistleblower for OSHA. And he said that you should have been reinstated because Wells Fargo never responded and they never did your investigation. He was given specific orders to close my case without investigating. And then I just thought, wow, I never knew that. Like all these years, I never known. So not only is Wells Fargo doing all this dark, crazy fraud, it goes to OSHA, who's under the Department of Labor, who's under the Department of Justice. They've all known about it and have done nothing about it. So I have not met Darrell in person, but immediately after that interview, I requested to get in touch with him, so I wanted to personally thank him. He wanted to apologize. The first thing out of his on his email was, first of all, I need to apologize because I just did what I was told to do. Close your case. But he remembered. And you know, what are the odds that the investigator and me were able to connect? Just recently, March 27th, I received an award from the Northern California Society of Professional Journalists. Sorry, that's long, I had to write it. And it's called the James Madison Freedom of Information Award. I was really honored to get that award. That's usually given to journalists, and I said, I'm not a journalist, but I guess me being vocal about and expressing my case and wanting to bring awareness to people like you and me of what to do and not to allow Wells Fargo to continue what they're doing, I guess they thought I deserved the award. So I received it, and I'm really honored for that. And then A equals R. Also in my training, right above the box, that was also Wells Fargo formula. That was the very first thing that came out of my instructor's mouth. A equals R. And what they said it meant, it says actions equals results. So in banking terms, if I didn't do the right actions, I was not going to get the right amount of checking accounts. But you can apply that to anything that you want. I'm going to give another example, dieting. If I continue to eat whatever I want to eat and not exercise, I'm going to get the same results. I'm going to keep my weight. Unless I change my activity, I'm not going to change my results. That should be applied to Wells Fargo and all the companies that are bullying, because we are the ones that need to change. We need to change the actions, and we need to demand change for better protection for the workers so that we can have different results. If we don't do that, we continue to have the same results as we have been getting today. And then I'm just going to close with Albert Einstein's quote that says, "The world's a dangerous place to live, not because of the people who are evil, but because of the people who don't do anything about it."
Actually, it's because of the good people are not doing anything about it.
No, it's not because of the evil. It's because we've witnessed a lot of things and we don't do anything about it.
After the evil, it's good. But good people are not doing anything about it.
So when I was fired, the day that I was fired, my manager said, "Give me your keys, clear your desk, and go home." And she said, "You're in insubordination." And again, I didn't know what that meant. But I figured it can't be anything good, because she's asking for my key and she's asking me to clear my desk, and they brought a little box. So I knew I was fired. But I saw it coming. Like, I knew it was coming. At least I was somewhat prepared that it was going to be happening. All the other bankers and tellers knew that this was happening, and I would be their voice. But when they saw me getting fired, no one said a peep. And I remember walking out, and I said, "I need to say goodbye to my friends." I went around and I spoke to all the tellers and all the bankers, and I said, "You guys just witnessed me getting fired. It's almost as if I fell and no one's helping me get up. I'm doing this for you." And I left. And when I saw that, I related to that moment. Eventually, Wells Fargo said, "No, you were never fired. What are you talking about?" It was all a misunderstanding, because they knew there was going to be a wrongful termination lawsuit. So anyways, here I am. I'm really hoping that something happens. 2 years ago, Wells Fargo admitted of opening the 2 million fake accounts, which contradicts my lawsuit that was lost, because the judge said that I lost my case because I didn't meet my quotas. I didn't open my 8 accounts every single day. So now my hopes are to be able to go back to Wells Fargo and say, "Now you've admitted, so somebody lied under oath during my trial, and I should have won. But I just now know that the case is just much bigger and dirtier than I initially thought, because the government's involved. And there's not very many lawyers that would want to work against the government." So it's up to people like you and I to bring awareness. I'm not doing a campaign to ask people to close accounts at Wells Fargo. But if you have an account, Wells Fargo has been dinged with insurance fraud, mortgage fraud, bank account fraud, credit card fraud. What else do we need in order for us to make the move? You guys hear about it on the news. You guys hear about it in the newspaper. So Wells Fargo is this big table, and the four legs are the customers. We need to start pulling those customers away so something happens to Wells Fargo. Thank you.